Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I welcome you all to a panel on youth civic engagement and participation. I am Niloufar Chowdhury, Senior Advisor, Partnerships and Development, Global Peace Foundation. And I'm truly honored to moderate this very important panel. Before we begin, I would like all of you to join us in our brief pre-session poll. The poll should appear on your screens, and if you could please take a few seconds to look at the poll and submit your answers, we would really appreciate hearing from you. Thank you for your inputs in the poll. We will now begin our panel discussion on youth civic engagement and participation. More than 50% of the global population is under the age of 30, but youth often have difficulty in voicing their opinions and exercising their civic rights, and are frequently excluded from decision-making on issues that affect their lives. We have seen that countries in which civic and political institutions are more inclusive and participatory tend to be more peaceful and resilient and less vulnerable to conflict and fragility. Strengthening civic engagement and participation of youth helps to develop their civic skills, inspires them to participate in political, economic, and social decision-making that impact their lives, and empowers them to become agents of positive change in their communities. Today, I have the privilege to introduce some distinguished panelists from across the globe who will share with us the best practices, innovative approaches, and lessons learned in advancing young people's participation in civic and political life, and how their work is contributing to the broader agenda and the way forward. Our panel format will consist of brief opening remarks from our panelists, followed by a moderated discussion. And we encourage our audience to check out the bios of our distinguished speakers on the event page of the forum on our website. Speaker bio link is also on the chat box. I would now like to introduce our first panelist, Ashley Law, Youth Specialist at International Foundation for Electoral Systems, headquartered in Washington, D.C. Ashley, we would welcome your opening remarks.
Great. Hi, Niloufar. Welcome, everyone, to today's session. I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to share my screen for a short presentation to accompany my opening remarks. As Niloufar said, my name is Ashley Law. I am the youth specialist at the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. For those who don't know much about IFES, we are a nonprofit organization that seeks to advance democracy for a better future. We collaborate with civil society members and organizations, public institutions, and the private sector to build resilient democracies that deliver for everyone. And in terms of our youth programming, we employ a rights-based approach that empowers young people to participate in democratic processes and acknowledge young people as partners and positive agents of change. IFES partners with young people, civil society, election management bodies, among others, to increase youth participation in spaces for their engagement. With younger age groups, IFES prioritizes building civic awareness and political knowledge early in life when school-age children are constructing their internal values and beliefs and building those relationships with people and institutions in their communities. IFES also implements activities that build knowledge for knowledge and skills for newly enfranchised voters to participate in elections and advocate for change at the local, national, regional, and global levels. And so IFES recognizes the key contributing role that young people play in building and sustaining democracies. And as Nilüfer said, with young people under the age of 30 making up over half the population, it really is imperative that they are involved in shaping policies that affect them, and that they are represented in decision-making processes. But unfortunately, we still only see that young people represent only 2.2% of the world's members of parliament. And so there's still a real discrepancy here. And our programs work to narrow that discrepancy to ensure that young people know about their civic and political rights and know how to exercise them. So I just wanted to also share a few program highlights. For over 20 years, our team in Kyrgyzstan has implemented democracy camps for school-age students to broaden their understanding of civic engagement. And through a 10-day camp and interactive exercises, and also a post-camp student action project, students learn about their country's governance structure, citizens' role within it, and democratic concepts such as leadership, civic responsibilities, and political participation. In Bangladesh, we work with university students under the Students Against Violence Everywhere, or SAVE program. And this program really builds knowledge and skills around preventing conflict, promoting peace and tolerance among their peers, across university campuses, and of course within their home communities. And so the SAVE program has grown to 12 universities across Bangladesh. One of our other impactful programs is a university level civic education approach that we call Strengthening Engagement Through Education for Democracy, or SEED. And this is a methodology to empower young people, specifically university students, to promote civic engagement. The capstone component of this course is a student action project, and it's designed to encourage leadership and service learning. So students identify an issue in their communities, conduct research related to this issue and to course topics, and devise a realistic action plan to address this issue in their community. So through firsthand experience, students really hone the knowledge, the dispositions, and the skills necessary for active and informed citizenship. And we've been implementing SEED across a number of universities in Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and also Bangladesh.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing your insights about the importance of youth participation and the great work that IFES is doing to boost civic engagement and participation of youth. I will now move to Alexandra Chandran, and I'm pleased to welcome you. Alexandra is the Head of Partnerships at Citizen Lab Belgium. Alexandra, I welcome you to share your opening remarks.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. So I just want to open by talking about how we can look at digitalization when it comes to civic participation, and also looking at how that can be done alongside young people. So I think at a time when working remotely and living remotely has become so normal for us, I think there's significant opportunities for digitalizing civic participation. And from our own experience at Citizen Lab, we have a digital democracy platform that is used by numerous local governments, national governments, ministries, and so on. And we've engaged with many of these entities who are using the platform to engage with their communities on issues around the impact of COVID, to building a new vision and operating model for national education and employment initiatives. So it's a really wide scope of opportunity and initiatives that they're undertaking. And what we found that it's really important to create a space for deliberation, for disagreement, for co-creation, for co-design, to gather impactful and meaningful input, so that decisions that are made are really based on people's ideas, people's thoughts, people's opinions and everyday experience, and really bringing together that collective intelligence. And what we found is these things can be done in a digital way, and they can be done very well and very successfully. But I think it's also really important, and I think this speaks to the great work that Ashley just mentioned, is when we're talking about anything digital, we also need to talk about inclusion. We need to consider different groups who have accessibility needs, as well as those who may not have access to the internet or digital devices. And the questions are, how do we include them in our online methods, but also in offline methods? And how do we work with different community groups to ensure that there is equity in engagement? And when it comes to talking about young people and youth in the digital space, I think there can be some really meaningful engagement, but I think there needs to be more engagement with young people through digital channels in a meaningful, tangible way. Many young people are already online. They're considered digital natives. They know how to navigate things. They know how things work. And in the last few years, we've seen youth at the forefront of climate change, Me Too, Black Lives Matter movements. But for me, what's missing is them having a really tangible opportunity to shape policy, to shape how things happen, to shape their communities. So, how can they shape how the police are policing our streets and our communities, or how sex education and consent are taught in schools, or how our environment ministers are making decisions about reducing atmospheric pollution across our cities. And so there needs to be a real kind of thought around how we involve young people in a structured and meaningful way so that they can impact the decisions that will undoubtedly affect the way they live their lives for many years to come. And I also just wanted to share a couple of case studies from Citizen Lab. So one of which is us having worked with the National Youth Institute in Chile, and our partners in Chile have been working with them and launched a project which has seen it skyrocket in terms of the number of users and engagement activity on there, reaching over 30,000 young people on the platform. And the idea was to get millennials specifically to contribute ideas to their community, how their community could implement more sustainable ways of operating to improve their communities and the way people are living. And what was also nice is that the best ideas were taken forward, the most popular ideas were taken forward, and those individuals who put those ideas forward were brought into a leadership program where they were able to work with the local governments, the national governments, to implement those ideas in a real way. We also worked with Youth for Climate. They used our platform to engage a number of ideas and contributions around climate change. And we utilized a feature on our platform, which at the early stages was fairly rudimentary, and now it's kind of blossomed. But there was a heck of a lot of qualitative input that was on there around ideas and contributions to how climate change can be tackled. And we use natural language processing to be able to take that qualitative input and really get a bit more of an understanding of what were the similarities and differences across contributions and what kind of decisions could be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. We are using the digital platform more than ever now, and it's great to hear the important work that Citizen Lab is doing to engage youth through the digital platform. Let us now shift to our next presenter. It's my pleasure to introduce Caroline Nyamu. Caroline is the Civic Engagement Manager at Uriah Trust, Kenya. Caroline, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here to share a little bit about the work that we are doing. So I'll just put up my slides. Uriah Trust is the premier civic education institution in Kenya. Our vision is to have an informed, empowered, and democratic Kenya. And the way we seek to realize this vision is to provide quality civic education and to empower citizens to realize their constitutional aspirations. One of the projects that we're currently implementing aims to equip young people to engage in governance issues in urban informal settlements. And just to explain a little bit about how this works, in one of the Nairobi informal settlements, the National Electrical Provision Supply Company disconnected power to the settlement. And the reason they gave was that there was numerous illegal connections, and they made the cost to the company made it untenable. The impact of this disconnection was that there was a rise in crime in this settlement and a disruption of livelihoods. Many small businesses in these informal settlements rely on electricity, your barber shops, your phone charging kiosks. So they couldn't run. And then a disruption of basic services. This was happening during COVID. So children were at home and needed things like radios or mobile devices to be able to access their classes or their lessons, and they couldn't do this. And through the civic education that we provide, young people in this settlement were able to understand what their rights were and how they could use these rights. We also supported them to organize themselves for collaborative lobbying to the government. And we're happy to say that it was 7 months of darkness, but the informal settlement finally was able to have electricity restored. And when we're speaking to these young people, one of them said, we realize that the Constitution does protect us, and it provides us with an opportunity to engage with our duty bearers. And so when we think about how youth in our context are influencing governance, and how the work, our work sort of interplays with that, linking the knowledge that we provide to the needs of these young people. If the knowledge is not linked to their needs, they're less likely to use it. But it's more than just providing knowledge. It's also supporting them and building their capacity to organize themselves for collaborative advocacy. And then lastly, just creating greater understanding with the duty bearers that we're working with. We're coming from a context where young people's engagement with duty bearers has often been combative. And so this is a sort of a new way of doing engagement and helping government to understand what it is that the young people are doing helps in yielding greater results. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline, for sharing your insights about Uriah Trust's work on civic engagement and civic education. Our next panelist is Leonard Faustino, Director for Youth Development Program, Global Peace Foundation, Philippines. Welcome, Leonard.
Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm Leonard Faustino. I'm handling the Youth Development Program of Global Peace Foundation here in the Philippines. Youth civic engagement activities and programs are critical for empowering young people to develop their skills and talents, participate in political, economic, and social conversations, and become agents of positive change in their communities. Let me share with you the Global Peace Foundation Philippines youth portfolio here in the Philippines. We have engaged 44,869 young people, 245 schools reached, and provided a total of $45,000 seed funding to creative and innovative projects, and over 22 partners to make this happen. You know, civic engagement involves working to make a difference in the civic life of one's community and developing combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. The four constructs of civic engagement, civic action, civic duty, civic skills, and social cohesion. Having the four constructs of civic engagement, GPF makes sure that in its character and civic education, we advance the involvement of young people in their critical responsibility in our society and rooted in the right motivation, as we have these three pillars in framing our programs and activities. Self-discovery, mapping out your purpose and passion, and start visualizing your dream. building relationship and understanding what binds us together, and creating an impact and youth empowerment, because life gets meaningful when we could serve and create an impact on others. Here are some of the activities that we have in the Philippines for youth development. We have Global Peace Volunteers Camp, we have the Global Youth Summit, the Global Youth for SDG Chandran competition, Shaping Our Future webinar series, Safe Talks, and we have the Safe Spaces campaign. We are trying our best to engage as many young people as we could in our programs, and trying our best to capacitate and inspire them, and at the same time contribute and provide seed funding to further expand their initiatives. Well, allow me to share with you some inspiring stories about youth participation and civic engagement. We have here the Bangsamoro Peace Movers. They won in our Sea Grant competition, and they wish to change the wrong perception of the society towards Islamic institution, counter violent extremism through peace building. We have here J. Angelo Pineda. He joined Global Youth Summit for 3 consecutive years and awarded as our Safe Space Hero. He recognized the importance of having an access to accurate and up-to-date personal health information to help ease the duties of our health workers. We have here Sarah Fabito. She participated also in our Global Youth Summit and was awarded as our Safe Space Hero. Her goal is to educate, inspire, and empower her local community of women to break gender barriers and discrimination in technology. These are inspiring stories of young people making creative and innovative solutions in the challenges that we are facing in our society by actively providing them with inspiration, character, and civic education, and also funding to expand their impact in their communities. But this is not possible without the partners that we have here in the Philippines who believe in our vision and empowering young people to become moral and innovative leaders. In this kind of ecosystem, we can create an environment where we support each other in a meaningful way towards a better society. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Thanks for sharing the good work that you are doing in the Philippines in this space. Thank you all of our panelists for your opening comments. We will now transition to a moderated discussion. My first question is to you, Ashley. COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented challenges to civic engagement and participation of youth. What are some of the promising practices and lessons learned that you have come across in responding to these challenges?
Thanks, Nilafar. This is a really important question, so I'm glad there's time to discuss this. Young people across the world are facing a number of barriers right now when it comes to engaging in civic and political life. Things like school closures, where millions of students are out of school. It's creating a learning gap, right? And when you think about schools with formal civic education programs, you can then, think about the democratic learning gap that is happening with some of these students. Social distancing, business closures, stay-at-home orders, that's really limiting how and when young people can gather with friends and extended family members. Young people's participation is more and more informal, right? So it's not formal processes. So the social distancing really causes some challenges. It's also raised issues around mental health and wellness, and increased feelings of anxiety, depression, feelings of loneliness. And I think, folks don't always consider how those feelings impact young people's will and motivation to participate in their communities, which I think is really critically to think about when we consider social cohesion and community engagement. And obviously social distancing has resulted in young people being further excluded from opportunities to formally participate in decision-making processes. And this is particularly relevant as we consider governments and communities creating strategies around COVID-19 responses and looking at the post-COVID environment. And we really do need young people's input on these strategies so that we can really address their lived realities. But I think that COVID, we've really witnessed how resilient young people are and how their contributions play a pivotal role in our communities and impact us. And I think there's a real shift in how young people are being seen in terms of being leaders. There's this perception, traditional perception that views young people not as leaders, right? But this is shifting now. You've seen ever since COVID hit, young people are taking to digital activism and sharing their voices in unique and different ways on social media, for example. So in our programs, we've seen a lot of our young partners take to social media, especially with some of our Democracy Camp alumni. We've had to adapt our program to a virtual forum, and they've really leveraged Instagram to hold discussions with other young people to talk about issues of importance to them. Not only just the feelings of isolation, but also professional development and careers. So, just the vast impact that COVID has had on them, and how they're going to overcome this when they're able to engage in society freely again. Also with our SAVE leaders in Bangladesh, there's been a lot of issues around COVID-19 disinformation. And so very quickly, our young leaders took to social media to create PSAs and different campaigns to spread news around how to identify fake news and counter disinformation, also promoting good hygiene practices related to COVID, and also posting messages to just encourage young people to continue to advocate. The work doesn't stop during a pandemic. In fact, it's actually more important. And something unique that they organized was a virtual art competition. And I think, that's a really nice way to bring about visually some of the feelings that we can't always articulate, especially in our communities. And it's a great way to raise awareness about important issues. And the last thing I want to touch on is in Ukraine with our university course, that of course had to be adapted to a virtual e-learning platform as well. And one of the innovative add-ons that they created in response to this, in response to the pandemic, was a new series called Coffee with the State. So, already young people are excluded from formal decision-making processes, but even more so with the COVID pandemic. But what we found is, inviting an elected leader to a short little coffee series to talk about their role in the government and talk with university students about, how to engage in governance structures has been really helpful. And it has sort of bridged that gap. And just something that Alexandra talked on as well, there are still issues of accessibility when it comes to digital and social media tools. I mean, they're wonderful in terms of reaching vast populations of people, but there are also a significant amount of young people who lack access to internet and resources to engage online. So some of our youth partners have engaged in letter writing campaigns to advocate for change with their elected leaders. We've also seen them organize food campaigns and distribution of necessities to those who are high risk and unable to leave their homes. And then we've also seen them really engage over the phone with SMS and call trees to make sure that they're checking in on their community, their neighbors, and also to act as a call center for fact-checking information about COVID. So I'll stop there. I do want to just mention quickly that IFAS did put together a paper that talks about some of these challenges in more depth and recommendations for how to improve access and inclusion during COVID-19. And it's a paper called Inclusion and Meaningful Political Participation, which is part of our larger COVID-19 briefing series. And I see our colleague put that in the chat box. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Ashley, for your insights. And that's actually a good transition to Alexandra. Alexandra, you talked about utilizing the digital platform to engage different people across the communities. What are the opportunities for digitalizing civic participation? And can the passion and activism displayed by youth in the digital space be channeled into meaningful civic engagement and participation?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, as I mentioned in the opening, there's real opportunities considering we're all still facing this pandemic situation, and I think there's a real opportunity to find ways of navigating that through online channels, through digital channels, and to getting people who have the capability and the capacity to come online to do so. And I think we can mix those with the traditional methods of paper surveys, of town hall meetings when that's allowed, of kind of regular mail that comes through when it comes to campaigns and so on, whether that's information campaigns or electoral campaigns. And I think something else that the pandemic has highlighted is the real chasm of inequality and equity across society, and highlighted the flaws and the deep cracks when it comes to our current standards around how we engage with communities, how we make decisions. I mean, you can see this from really ill-informed lockdown policies, testing procedures, inadequate vaccine programs, and a lack of provision when it comes to supporting the most vulnerable and those who are in most need of support across our societies. And I think that's where, you know, we have an opportunity with digital channels to engage people and bring their experiences to the fore, and really utilize them, because, you know, we leave behind so many who are disenfranchised and not considered able or switched on enough to contribute or be engaged. But really, I suppose if we're honest, these people were already left behind before the pandemic happened. So I think, you know, hopefully the pandemic provides more momentum now to show how upside down things have been and really reveal like what the status quo is, and how it needs to change. And then when it comes to looking at young people and their engagement, I mean, I shared those two examples, and you just want to kind of expand on the point around creating a space for deliberation, disagreement and debate, co-creating things and co-designing things, and giving an opportunity to do that. And I think also not treating young people as just young people, and you know, taking them seriously and taking the issues that they feel are important seriously, because they're going to be inhabiting the world as adults and continuing to shape how we live. So why not get them on board as soon as possible, and help get them to help start shaping our societies now. And I think doing that digitally and really harnessing where they are and where they live, and often that is online, and bringing them into the picture that way. And the examples of the Youth Institute in Chile and the Youth for Climate are really nice examples of engagement through those digital means. And again, the point of inclusion, it's been said a couple of times, like we can talk about digital till the cows come home, but we need to make space for you know, building capacity, building capability, and ensuring there are a number of different ways to engage. So yeah, mixed methods, I think, is the way forward, but really harnessing what we can in a digital way as well.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's fascinating how you are leveraging the new digital environment to advance your work. I will now move on to Caroline. Caroline, in your work, you have emphasized the importance of informed citizenry. How are you empowering youth and creating opportunities for them to fulfill their civic responsibilities and become engaged as change makers in their communities?
Great, thanks, Nilofer. Like I mentioned in my opening remarks, civic education is quite central to what we do. But just beyond the civic education that we're providing, I think one of the important things is helping the young people to realize that they do have agency. I think we're coming from a context where the narrative, certainly in this country, has been that youth are the leaders of tomorrow, so they don't have a space today. But actually the challenges that we're facing today with over half the population in this country being young people, they're the most affected. And they're the ones who stand perhaps the biggest chance to come up with innovation. And we've seen that during the COVID pandemic. The innovations are coming from the young people. So helping these young people to realize that they do have the agency, and helping them to then use that power that they have in a more sort of constructive way or channeled way. Alexandra mentioned in her opening remarks about, just challenges like how do you monitor how the police are doing their job in the community. So, and that's some of the work that we're doing with these young people, engaging and challenging, say, the police in terms of some of their practices. So yeah, so helping them to realize their agency. I think the other thing, again, we're coming from a context where citizen participation in general has been very lacking in this country. So young people's participation is almost non-existent, and helping the young people to realize that their voice does actually matter and they can make a change, and sharing some of the stories from the different places, and being able to see what they're doing. So starting small, like writing letters, and I think Ashley mentioned that, writing letters, writing petitions, visiting these officials in their offices and having conversations, starting to build those bridges. I mean, those are some of the ways that we are helping them, and we can help them to engage and stay engaged. But like I said as well, helping them to realize that for us, especially in our context, that the Constitution, the legal framework does actually provide instruments to address some of the challenges or some of the problems that they're facing in their communities. So how to use these often seen very technical instruments, how to make them accessible, and how to use them to then change the reality in their communities. I'm excited about how young people are actually leading some of these initiatives and are actually organizing the older people in their communities to bring about this change. So it really is important, we find in our work, to kind of enable or to help these young people realize that the power is in them, and they just need just a little bit of a nudge, and they're off on their way. The energy that they bring, the energy they exude is just quite encouraging and inspiring. So using those opportunities and channels to then leverage the young people to change their environments and to bring about positive change. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for your insights. I think that's really wonderful to hear. How about the student, about the agency of youth and all that. We all know that communities with inclusive civic engagement, where everyone has a voice in the issues that impact their lives, experience stronger civic responsibility. Leonard, in the context of your work, what are the best practices or approaches of engaging a diversity of youth from different socioeconomic, ethnic, and religious backgrounds to advance civic engagement?
Well, thank you for that question, Nilofar. You mentioned a while ago about the new digital environment that we have right now. Online connectivity has been improved now more than ever because of how easily we can access information in this digital age. We also get to connect with various people within hand's reach. In my experience, we took advantage of the full potential that the online community has to offer. Since March 2020, we managed to adapt to the new normal in navigating the available resources we have online. And now more than ever, in terms of reach, in providing relevant discourse and opportunities to young people, we managed to thrive and be on track with our goals in empowering young Filipinos to be active, engaged, no matter where they are, what socioeconomic, ethnic, and religious backgrounds they have. And from those, the best practice is to really reflect upon the conversations you had and try to analyze which part you want to improve on. And as youth participation is very much critical in all the challenges we are facing, that connectivity will spark a whole new generation that will be educated and aware that differences are something to take benefit of.
Thank you, Leonard. We now come to the closing statements, and I would like to invite our panelists for short 2-minute closing remarks. Ashley, would you please share your closing thoughts?
Thanks, Nilüfer. I was listening to all the panelists speak, and I really agree with everyone. Young people are such a large and important population, a key demographic really to building peaceful, just, and democratic societies. And I think one point that we really overlook sometimes is how young is too young. I think no matter their age, and speaking to, Caroline's comment about young people's agency, these folks are already active members of our communities. It's just sort of how we harness the energy and work with them. So I think looking forward and thinking about a post-COVID-19 environment, it's going to be really important that community and government leaders and really all actors acknowledge this fact. And acknowledge young people's agency, no matter their age, and really the opportunity to partner with them to address some of the more complex challenges that we face in our communities. Thank you.
Great. Alexandra, let me call on you for your closing remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. There's no disagreement across the panel here, which is nice. And I think what's really inspiring is to be able to see the different levels and types of work that people are doing. And it's great to see the on the ground and the really grassroots stuff, and then also see more kind of the work that we're kind of doing, which I guess is more in the digital space, which can also obviously be in grassroots. But it's nice to see that those methods are being mixed and there's a real harnessing of different ways of doing things. And I think that's what's really important, is how we scale engagement, how we can reach different people to get different input, and to also, something as an organization with Citizen Lab that we think about is, we work globally, but we recognize that we are in Europe and we're Europe based. So we need to work with a number of different partners and organizations to make sure that on the ground we have really, really good local knowledge, and we're doing things in the right way. We're adapting the platform, we're adapting the way we talk about things and the way we present things. And I think that's essential, both from a general perspective, but also from a youth perspective, and being able to adapt that for different young people across different countries. And yeah, I think there's so much passion and there's so much power when it comes to young people making decisions and standing up for their rights and pushing things forward. So yeah, I'm really excited and inspired to see all the work that's going on, and look forward to seeing more of those things come to life and having more discussions like this.
Great, thank you. Caroline, do you have closing thoughts to share with us?
Sure. Again, I mean, the conversations have just been really inspiring. And as I was engaging with this subject, I think one of the things that we perhaps forget is that right through history, young people have played a pivotal role in shaping society. in the recent history. I mean, we forget, or we probably don't remember, that someone like Jacinda Ardern was the first parliamentarian when she was in her 20s, and did amazing things. People like William Wilberforce, who fought against slave trade, was in his 20s when he first got into parliament. Uganda had the youngest parliamentarian at 19 years of age. So young people are just, they've got such energy, and they have been instrumental right through history. And so for us, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're a practitioner, the space is enough for young people to come in here and influence policies, because after all, these policies are affecting them. The projects, the initiatives that we do are affecting young people, whether positively or negatively. I mentioned that in Kenya during the pandemic, a lot of the innovation that was coming up in response to the COVID issue was coming from young people. They were developing incubators, hand washing stations. So they have a lot to offer. So young people are not the leaders of tomorrow. They are today's leaders. They are today's change makers. And they need to be in those spaces where change is being determined and change is being made. Thank you.
Great. Leonard?
All right, thank you very much. I could have agreed more with what Caroline said, that we are not the future leaders, we are already leaders today because we're making a lot of decisions in our everyday life. One important question that we should keep asking ourselves is this. Is this really the kind of society that we want to live in? If the answer is no, then it sends a strong signal for you to speak up, to act, and to engage. We have to remember that we are the most impactful sector of our society. Surely we sometimes get overwhelmed by the changes that we want to push for, but we just have to believe in them. We should never underestimate our collective power to push for causes that are even larger than ourselves. If you think a certain thing matters, then it matters. We just have to amplify our voices and actions to move the world from where it is to where it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your closing remarks. We'll now take a few moments to run a quick poll, and we'll appreciate if you could share your thoughts about how the session was. Thank you. We are now at the close of the panel. Many thanks to each of our speakers for such an engaging discussion. All of you and your organizations are doing remarkable work to strengthen youth civic engagement and participation. Each of you brought a unique perspective and viewpoint on how civic engagement promotes meaningful participation of youth in public life and how it empowers them to become peace and resilience builders. Today's discussion has really sparked interesting and thought-provoking ideas, and I encourage you all to connect and continue the conversation online. Now I would like to announce about an exciting event that Global Peace Foundation will be hosting later this year. Please save the date for our upcoming Global Peace Convention in August. Hope you can all join us. And please look out for announcements on our website for registration. You can also check out the chat box for the link to the Save the Date page. annual Peacesharing Forum around this time next year. Thank you.